We're now at night 3 of the Netflix episodic event of Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities. Episodes 5 and 6 both come from H.P. Lovecraft stories, so let's get into them. Episode 5 is Pickman's Model, and it stars Ben Barnes and Crispin Glover. Now this follows an art student named Will, who meets an introverted fellow artist named Richard. The more he creates, the more Richard's terrifying works of art begin to have a deeply disturbing effect on Will's sense of reality. Ben Barnes is Will, and when he first meets Crispin Glover's Richard and he sees a drawing, he's instantly intrigued by the macabre tone that Richard has chosen. And wanting to see more, Will goes to Richard's home where he gets just a glimpse at some paintings that few are ever going to see. I love the special effects that takes place as Will looks over the paintings. There's a dreamlike feel to them, or really, maybe it's more of a nightmare, but we get to see incredible depth in the paintings, making them appear way more real than they really should be. With this story, it's a little focused on obsession, but it's almost a tormented obsession. Will is haunted by the art, and it begins to affect what he sees. And again, we get some great special effects as well as just some creepy uses of darkness and shadows. The story does a good job of showing how the visions Will experiences really begin to deteriorate his mind and moods, and Barnes drew me in with his quiet delusion. The color palettes also really help to establish the tone. There's a mix of cool tones that make the sequences foreboding, and then there are warmer tones to really just bring a softness and even a sense of security for the characters. But we know that safety could just be a facade as the story descends into madness. Now this is directed by Keith Thomas, who hasn't directed much, but he brings a story that builds in intensity and then it also messes with time. And I really enjoyed how scenes and settings would change, just putting us almost into Will's shoes, allowing us to experience some of that discombobulation that the character was feeling when he'd be in one time and then boom, he's in another. Crispin Glover is outstanding in this, and I think he's the perfect choice for Richard. Now he's certainly quirky, but very earnest in his passions and art. And it never felt like it was a shtick, even though his accent was a bit hard to get used to. But he translates the fierceness of the character's beliefs in just a way that is both unassuming and menacing. As the story progresses, there are some very gnarly visuals. And while the whole episode isn't super scary, it does have a huge ominous tone to it, where there's this growing sense of dread through each scene. Now this episode is just over an hour, and some of the storytelling is a bit slower, but that allows it to draw us in and take us on Will's journey, which ends then with a horrifying result. I think if you're a fan of Lovecraft, you can really enjoy this story and the presentation. It's a slower one, but it dives into the weird that you'd expect. There's a little sex, some nudity, a little bit of profanity, and then some gruesome violence. So next up is another Lovecraft tale called Dreams in the Witch House, and this is directed by Catherine Hardwicke, and it stars Rupert Grint and Ishmael Cruz Cordova. Years after his twin sister's death, a researcher ventures into a dark and mysterious realm with the aid of a special drug, determined to bring her back. Now this story also deals with obsession, but one of a very different sort. Rupert Grint has mourned his sister's death for many years, and he's always wanted to bring her back from the dead, just to save her from the beyond. Now he finds out about this concoction that allows him to sort of travel into another realm where he believes that his sister is. But as he works to retrieve her, a sinister entity and a very disturbing looking rat are trying to use him for their own purposes. The visuals that are used to show the realm where the sister supposedly is, I think they're awesome. There's this very blue hue to the whole thing, and it looks to be a menacing forest where people wander about almost oblivious to their fate. And the production design is wonderful too, creating two separate worlds that are both not very inviting. And that rat that I had mentioned, it's just plain wrong. There's a quality to it that makes it even nastier than an already dirty rat could be. Now, Grint is also a good choice in the role because he displays the hopeful optimism that feels genuine, despite appearing a bit downtrodden. Now, he's playing a bit more of his Ron character from Harry Potter than his Julian character from Servant. And if you're a fan of Outlander, you'll notice a song that is hummed throughout this episode. Now, the pacing for this one is patient again, just like episode 5, but I felt the time a bit more in this one. And there are moments of urgency, which are fun, but overall, the story unfolds without any sense of pressure or suspense. For me, this was the weakest story of the entire anthology. And it's not because the production didn't look great or the acting was subpar. The story itself just failed to really hook me and then invest me. I enjoyed a lot of the setup, especially as Grint goes to this house where a witch had supposedly lived and died. And it just provides an eerie backdrop and a setting for visuals that I think could make your skin crawl. And the sets are excellently crafted where you can almost feel the dampness of a room and just smell the dank air. I also really enjoyed the aspect of obsession, how Grint is willing to abandon just about anything if it means he can have his sister back in his life. But when it came to the episode as a whole, it was just mediocre to me, just kind of okay. There's no sex or nudity, a little bit of profanity, and some violence. I give episode 5, Pickman's Model, 3.5 out of 5 couches, and episode 6, The Witch House, 3 out of 5 couches. So have you been enjoying the series so far, or have you been waiting just to binge them all at once? And if you have been watching them episode by episode, which one's been your favorite? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.